If you are planning a trip to Uganda, here's exactly how I planned mine, what I wish I knew, as well as tips. Hi everyone, my name is Esther Jifa and you're welcome to Growing with Dzidzi. For today's video, I'm taking you through planning a trip to Uganda and the video will take this format. Let's get straight into it. I have my notes handy so I can give you all the necessary details. Okay, so the first thing is deciding on visiting Uganda. Okay, for me, since I came to Rwanda, seeing the neighboring countries have been big on my list. Okay, and I had a chance to go to Kenya. Uganda is just next door, so I said let's go for it. Okay, and when I thought of Uganda, the first thing that came to mind was Uganda is big, okay, and my first instinct was to visit the capital, okay, because if you're going to see a country, it kind of just makes sense to see the capital. But then I googled things to do in Kampala, okay, and there was this particular video that came up, and everything that the creator was talking about was visiting markets, town square, nightlife. It wasn't exciting for me. Like I'm not going to leave. When I think of a vacation, I'm thinking of rest or activities I can't experience in my local space. Okay. So telling me things I can do in or I see on a regular in Rwanda to go and do in Kampala, it wasn't exciting for me. So the next thing I did was I contacted one of my colleagues who is he's Ugandan, right? And then I told him about my idea. I was like, what can I do? Where can I go? etc. And then he suggested the place I actually went to, which was Kabale. 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 Yeah. So that's how I decided on the place. Uganda is big. You can choose a different region, but that was my thought process on picking a place. Just a little bit of information about Kabale. Kabale is often called the Switzerland of Africa, which can be defended by different sources. And I think the name kind of makes sense because it's mountainous, it's cold, it's peaceful. It even got foggy at a point actually. And it's very scenic. Okay. I think it's a calm place to take a break. In addition, it's the gateway to Lake Bunyoni, which is one of the most beautiful lakes in East Africa. It has about 12 scattered islands, like little sprinkles or jewels, right? And for the kind of trip I wanted, which was a reflective, calm, simple one, Kabale made perfect sense. And so that's how I made my decision. Next, we come to the planning and logistics. So for me, because I didn't want to stress too much, I used an agent and I think it was a really good idea. I'll recommend that as well. Because when you're going into a new space, you need somebody who is very familiar with the space. Okay. Either that or you do all the hard work of figuring everything out. In my past trips, I've been doing the hard work. This time I didn't want to do the hard work. Okay, so I outsourced it. And the agent took care of um my day one accommodation. He helped me book um the room on the island. He took care of transportation. He made all local calls, pick up and drop off, everything. He handled all of that, including most of my feeding. I think there was just one or two times I had to handle my feeding. Yes. So I'll definitely recommend going with an agent, especially if you are alone, right? It just feels safe to know that there's a local person who you can run and call or say, hey, this is not working, what do I do? All that. So the next thing is it was a road trip, not a flight. So if you are leaving from Rwanda, right, you go through the Nyabugogo. Okay. So you get yourself to Nyabugogo. There are two busing options I'm aware of. I'm sure there'll be other options, but you either use the Trinity or the cross country. I used cross country. So that's the exact one I'm going to recommend. I think Trinity is bigger. It means you spend more time at the border and it will be crowded. There are more people. I'm not big on a lot of people in the same space or in the same bus. So the smaller bus makes sense to me. And I also like the way it was organized. So there are about 8 people seated in the bus. You can tell the driver when to make stops and if you need to make any purchases along the way. And that will send you to their station in Kabale. Okay. The next thing I'll talk about is why the road trip made more sense. Well, Kabale borders Rwanda directly, right? And the bus trip is about 2 to 3 hours max. Okay, it didn't make sense to take a flight to Entebbe. I believe that's where the Ugandan airport is, right? And then do a trip back to Kabale. Because Kabale borders Rwanda, it made sense. It was cost efficient, convenient. There was also the chance of sightseeing, right? Just the scenic drive to 2 3 hours to Kabale. So that was why I made my decision to the bus instead of the flight. Now, when you're crossing the border, you need the following: you need your passport, you need your yellow fever card. If you are East African, you wouldn't need a visa. If you are not East African, depending on your country, you have to look it up if you do need a visa. Okay, as a Ghanaian, I didn't need a visa. Immigration will take your fingerprints, they'll ask you where you're going, then they'll stamp your passports. That's basically it, right? You can change your money at the border, but I wouldn't recommend it because I later found out that a forex bureau in the country had better rates for exchange. So in my opinion, if you are changing a large sum, just go into the country and do the change. Don't do it at the border. Also, I wasn't able to get a SIM card at the border, like um immediately. But when you drive a bit into town, you'll be able to do that. So that's just by the way. If you are using a phone that has an eSIM, the chances of you getting a SIM card easily might be a problem. You might have to go to the headquarters of the um, operator. All right. So the next thing is packing and preparation. So I had information beforehand about how cold Kabale is. I'll say I underestimated it a little bit, right? But I still packed jacket, comfortable shoes. I had sufficient socks. I had warm clothes. Um, Kabale is actually cold and foggy, especially at night, right? Especially the Bunyoni Island, right? It's super cold and there are no heaters. At least where I was, there were no heaters. You wouldn't really need heaters if you are layered enough, honestly. But if you are not, the cold will really get to you. So that's something to pay attention to. Other things I also packed was sufficient tissue because it's a road trip. You always want to have this handy. Water, snacks, because I wouldn't recommend eating or buying food along the way because you never know, your stomach might just might the food might not agree with your stomach, so just go with something you're familiar with for that duration. Also, I'll recommend cash over mobile money because if you are living from Rwanda, you'll be familiar with the fact that Rwandans use a lot of mobile money. It's not the same in um Kabale, or I think I can extrapolate and say Uganda, right? It's easier when you carry cash. Okay, so I'll advise you carry cash instead of mobile money. And if you do get an agent, you might not need to get a SIM card to make calls. Okay, so those are just things to think about. All right, so these are the details of the trip, planning, etc. In my next video, I'm going to actually take you through the experience, like what I did, the island I stayed at, etc, etc. So subscribe so that you don't miss that. Planning this trip was very exciting. I feel like it was another growth experience because it felt like a big girl thing to do, like doing something on your own, solo trip, etc. And I clap for myself for that. Okay. Um, so I'll share the details in the next video about the place. You see the island, some of the things I learned. Yeah. So subscribe so you don't miss that. Okay. Let's keep going together. Bye.